Adrian, I have never been in a crowd that was crying so much.
I apologize.
It was pretty amazing. So can you tell us when this idea of combining the themes of family and art and also traditions of Mexican Dia de los Muertos, how did that come about?
I think a lot of it, I would say of all of them, probably the tradition of Dia de Muertos came first. It was an idea that Leon Critch, the director, after he finished Toy Story 3, usually when you're developing a new film at Pixar, you kind of develop 3 ideas in tandem, just so that you can bounce from one to the other and you don't get too stuck on an idea. But one of the ideas that he was developing was a film that takes place during Dia de Muertos. And as he and the team began to get into the meanings behind the traditions, the visits to Mexico to experience all of these traditions, it became very clear that it was a tradition that lent itself to a story about family and a story about knowing where you came from. And then I think after that, we started to build in the pieces of, okay, so what is going to be the conflict that punches against that? And it kind of became this, story of how do you discover yourself as an individual when you live in a family whose traditions don't so much allow that expression. And that's where the music and the artistry kind of became I don't want to say a counter theme, but a theme that could create drama and conflict with this idea of the importance of family until it comes to a resolution.
Authenticity is such a big part of this film, and we never think about an animated film having authenticity. And can you talk about? I think you mentioned a little bit that you went through many years of research and travels to Mexico and learning about all the different cultures, the traditions, etc.
Yeah, we tried to hit it from every angle that we could. Early on, we started working on this film. Lee and Darla started developing this film 6 years ago, and the first thing that they wanted to do was go to Mexico on the Day of the Dead to experience the traditions, to visit different regions, to understand similarities from region to region and differences region to region. So that was very informative, especially because I think they had an idea of a story that they could tell around death, around this idea of family, but I think the initial impulses were to tell a story about letting go, or a story about, it was a story about grief and learning how to let go of that grief. But then upon going down to Mexico and embedding themselves with families, talking about the traditions and experiencing it, then this was before I had started, but Lee talks about how it kind of clicked in his brain that was quite the opposite of the spirit of Dia de Muertos. And when you go down, it's all about remembering and keeping these stories alive, and this idea that if you maintain that connection, you never have to let go. When I started on the film, I was working on Monsters University, and then when that released, I was freed up to join a new film. I really, I asked to work on Coco because so much of its themes of music and family and artistry were things that I grew up feeling very strongly about. And coming from a Mexican-American background myself, I thought, I would love to see this family reflect the things that I experienced growing up and the relationships and that dynamic. So from that angle, we were able to create a family that felt, it's this multi-generational household, and that has a particular feel. And so, from that angle, from the tradition angle, from the music angle, we just really wanted to connect ourselves with experts to do the research and let that inform the story at an early point, so that instead of creating a story and slapping stuff on, we were building it from the ground up, from the foundations of the culture.